Well, Rachel, thank you so much for helping out with my project. I was wondering if we could start off with maybe you saying a little bit about yourself.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you so much for the invitation to be involved. It's a pleasure and an honor and I'm so glad to contribute. Yeah, my name is Rachel Lyons and I'm the executive director of Space for Humanity. I originally the reason that I'm working in space is because I had this like awakening or cognitive shift experience when I was a teenager. And I watched the first episode of Neil deGrasse Tyson's Cosmos and saw the reality of our existence in the universe and went from someone with very little that I was passionate about to all of a sudden I had a life's purpose, and it was to share this perspective. And I went into aerospace engineering, and soon after found out about this thing called the overview effect. And it was in learning about the overview effect that I saw that that was why I was working in space. And what I'm now doing is I'm working to share the overview effect, which is the cognitive shift that happens to astronauts when they go to space and see our planet from a distance. I'm working to share that perspective with people via Space for Humanity. So we will be sponsoring people from all over the world to go to space to see our to see and experience our planet from a distance, see and experience the overview effect, and then come back down and share that perspective and implement change from it. Which for me, and why this is important to me, is because this perspective will fundamentally shift the way we treat each other, treat our planet, and address our greatest challenges. So which right now is um, continues to be more and more timely.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with all that, and just talking about the overview effect and perspective, I was thinking maybe I should go ahead and turn on my normal
I love it.
background.
I love it. Yeah, it's so good. So many of my meetings, it's like we all just have space backgrounds. So funny.
It sure beats the vanilla wall that you saw
Totally. Much
behind
better.
you.
Much
But
better.
I was wondering what you felt like the uh, perspective from orbit versus like a suborbital flight versus from the surface of the moon. If you feel like those would have like different levels of impact on a person.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, and I mean it's all amazing. And the person who coined the term overview effect, his name's Frank White, and he had that kind of experience on an airplane, just looking out at the horizon. So we're capable of having the experience from suborbital and orbital and likely stratospheric as well. And I think that going to the moon and experiencing the earth as a marble in the sky, that kind of experience is unmatched by being in suborbit or orbit.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think Neil Armstrong talked about he was able to hold his thumb up at a distance. Maybe I can do it here. There we go. And he's like, everybody and everything he had ever known, other
Mm,
than the two astronauts that were in space with him at the time, or behind his thumb.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing to think about.
And do you think it's like, I mean, what's the sensation? Is it humility? Is it awe? Is it both or something else? What?
All of the above, and it really depends on the human being too. I think it is well, it's studied by the University of Pennsylvania, was one of the universities, their psychology department. They did studies on this, and they said that the leading emotion from this experience is awe. And awe can be it comes up for a number of reasons, but the biggest thing is feeling like you're part of something bigger than yourself. Like it's induced with vastness, so feeling like you're part of something bigger than yourself, and then accommodation. So it's like when you're you have an experience that you don't currently have, like in your brain structures, so then your brain needs to create new structures for it. So it's those two things that is this experience of awe. And awe is associated with pro-social behaviors. It's associated with taking actions that benefit the community rather than yourself as an individual. It's associated with greater life purpose. It's associated with it just has all of these really beautiful impacts. Living in awe, and that is the biggest emotion that comes with the overview effect.
Now, I know with Space for Humanity, you're trying to get regular everyday citizens to have this experience and to be able to communicate it back to their community in a way that they uniquely can.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the thoughts that I had with respect to the people we've been sending to space is one attribute that I think characterizes pretty much all of them is
Mm-hmm.
the ability to be calm under pressure, stoicism, the ability to sort of repress emotional response because
Mm-hmm.
they're essentially, in many respects, still sort of test pilots.
Totally.
Um, and so the people that we've sent to space, I feel like are probably not the people that are able to best communicate this emotional experience to
Mm-hmm.
other people. And I was wondering if you felt the same way, or is that kind of like a naive perspective?
Um, I don't think it's naive at all. I think it's totally valid. I think that, I mean, there's two like things that go into this. And the first is astronauts are fantastic. Like the ones that I've met and like what I know about them is astronauts are fantastic communicators. Like you need to be able to live in a confined space in the International Space Station with, five other people, a couple of them from other countries who speak other languages, and you still need to be able to communicate with them. You need to be able to get along. You need to be able to get through any conflict that comes up. And you need to stay focused on the job. And that takes really, really powerful communication skills. And yeah, like you said, it doesn't take um deep emotional like deeply emotional skills. So a lot of astronauts are like very, very technically trained. And yeah, so I think I do. So the astronauts that I know do a fantastic job of sharing the overview effect. And I think when it's and some of them are poets, by the way. Some of them are artists in their own way. And when it's like when we focus on bringing people who are artists who are already sharing their work with the world via their emotions, via what they're expressing, via what they're creating, I think it's a whole new level of being able to express this experience.
Yeah, I think the person that probably epitomizes that most is probably Alan Bean in his paintings of the surface, from the surface of the moon and kind of like the art that he's created.
I haven't seen them. I have to look, or maybe you send them to me.
Yeah, he was one of the 12 people that walked on the surface of the moon, and after he retired, he did nothing but continuously paint um, moon
Okay.
pictures.
Yeah.
And he even took one of his mission patches that he wore while he was on the surface of the moon, and it had like moon dust in it, and
Mm,
actually embedded it into like his painting. So
wow.
that's kind of neat.
Cool. I'll have to look that up.
Uh, but I mean, that's a good point. I mean, they are extremely good communicators, and but I mean, very good technical communicators in the sense of they could probably give you a very clinical description of kind of anything that they go through in terms
Mhm.
of, say, um, there's some issue on the spacecraft, they would be able to relay kind of exactly what was happening to like the flight controllers who would be able to go and get a research team on it to give them instructions on how to deal with it, as opposed to like an emotional response to that issue, which would get in the way of that communication. It's almost like they
Totally.
have to. And so I was wondering if you had heard about the Dear Moon project.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I have.
And what do you think about the idea of sending like a group of artists, trained, people who have been like masters of communicating abstract, emotional um, thought in various forms. I mean, not just paintings, but music, and not just music, but photography and dance and even fashion design and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of impact do you think they'll be able to have?
I love the Dear Moon project. When they first, it's been a few years. It's been probably like 2 years now since I first announced what they were doing, and I haven't heard much since. Um, I've heard some interesting things since actually, but unrelated. You might also have heard that. Anyways, I love the Dear Moon Project. I think it's brilliant. It's so aligned with Space for Humanity. It just shows me, I'm like, it's great for me to see that there's other people who are thinking about this, who know how important it is. I think that, yeah, I mean, it's my hope that with Space for Humanity's mission that we want to bring amazing artists as well. So I think that the power of that is um, like I want to say unparalleled. Like it's really really powerful, and I'm a full supporter of it.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to see what happens. And it's the thing that you're talking about, the whole like dating contest. And
Yeah, that's what I was. That's what I was pointing to. Yeah.
yeah, I think there was definitely a lot of backlash about that. Like the first female to actually go around the moon, you would want to be there based upon her um, kind of um, you know, because of who she is, not just because she happened to win some type of kind of goofy contest. And
Totally. Yeah.
so
Yeah. That,
I
it was strange for many reasons.
yeah, in many ways, just that entire episode really undermined sort of the all that they had created around the project. Even though they've kind of discontinued it, I think there's still a little bit of questions in the back of people's mind about that.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, we'll have to see what they end up doing. I don't know. I didn't really keep up with it. I just saw it in the headlines and haven't heard, and I've been a supporter of the Dear Moon project since it was announced. So yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, it might have even been 3 years ago that it was announced, actually. I think it could have been, I think it was 3 years ago.
Well, the interesting thing is SpaceX had announced that they were going to send two people around the moon, but didn't give out any details.
Hmm.
And I believe that may have been 3 years ago.
Hmm.
And then like 2 years ago, when they decided to, they had that Starship event in
Hmm.
Los Angeles, or Hawthorne, where they announced that it was a billionaire and it'd be the first, that by 2023 they'll go around the moon on
Hmm.
Starship, and I think it's like 7 to 9 artists. I mean,
Hmm.
it's at that time they gave like the details, and then you know, yeah. So that's pretty much
Hmm.
that. But I think the other issue is around the selection of the artist. Um, what are your thoughts there? Do you think do you think it's just up to sort of the guy that's funding it, and he should just be able to choose whoever he wants? Or do you think it makes sense for him to kind of have some type of selection process that we all can buy into, by which he chooses the artist? And how would that impact sort of your excitement about the project?
Yeah. I mean, I think like ultimately it's his choice. He's the one funding it. He can do what he wants. And I'd like to like I think just seeing from it, it seems like his heart is there. Like he knows the potential of this and he's committed to carrying that out. So my guess is that he's gonna choose whatever he chooses, and that's his choice, you know. But I can tell you from a Space for Humanity perspective, what we're doing is with our selection process is we do plan to have a very inclusive selection committee. We put our applications out like worldwide. So in the past we've had more than 100 countries and nations represented in this application, like applying to our program. We want to have like, some maybe someone who's the CEO of a nonprofit that's working to combat climate change, and then there's someone else who is like an amazing artist or musician that can really get the word out to a large audience of young people. And then maybe there's someone else who's doing something else. And like we're committed to, and it seems like, I really want to say that it seems like um I think it's Yasaku Maezawa is his name. It seems like he is committed to something similar because of like the array of the types of artists that he wants to bring. And similarly to us, it's like we need to be inclusive in our selection process. So we need to have people on the team that are from all over. And we want to make sure that we're being inclusive in how we're getting the word out too, and having the whole world covered, because I mean, that's the mission of Space for Humanity, is to open up access to space for all of humanity. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, that's interesting. I was hoping to get there, um, for many reasons, but what is sort of the selection criteria that Space for Humanity plans to use? Or maybe you don't have that, but like, what's the process by which y'all determine that selection criteria? Maybe it's even a step
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's basically what I just shared, and that is we're looking for people who are leaders in their communities, people who have great potential for impact, people who this experience will only heighten and expand and yeah, heighten and expand like their circles and who's listening to them and their voice. We want to make sure that they're really mission aligned, so they agree, they're like their values are aligned with ours. We want them to, of course, be powerful communicators. Heart is important, like their heart's got to be there. They've got to get the mission. And we do want people who are addressing a myriad of different challenges, because like that's where we're at. We can't be closed-minded here. It needs to be someone who's working to address climate change, and someone who's working to address poverty, and someone else who is interested in the like positive uses of technology, and someone else who is a like, yeah, public speaker around a growth mindset. Like it really could, and someone else who's an artist. So it really could be all of these things. It's just like we're looking at their underlying values and their communication skills and like their ability to get the word out. Because like astronauts come back, and especially, I mean, especially a few decades ago, but even now, this is something that our founder Dylan talks about, but like he talks about how like he's lucky to have friends that are astronauts. Like I'm lucky to have advisors who are astronauts that I talk to frequently. And and meeting an astronaut is like meeting a rock star a lot. Like, a few decades ago when people came back from their Apollo missions, like they had parades for these people. So it suddenly gives someone like a new gravity, for lack of a better term, in the way that like people hold their voice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. But a lot of that has to do with sort of the uniqueness of these people.
Hmm.
Back whenever we had like the Mercury astronauts, I mean, they were literally, just a handful of people that had been in space, and now we have what, over 500 people that have been in space
Hmm.
over the course of the last 40, 50 years, I guess 60
Hmm.
years really. Um, and if Elon's even um, half as successful as he's talking about, within the next decade, we may have thousands and thousands of people that would have been in space.
Hmm.
So in terms of actually, individual astronauts, it seems to me at some point where these become really amazing events that we celebrate on TV, and we create, mission patches around and what have you, just become kind of more routine, and
Hmm.
you exchange the mission patches for boarding passes, and it
Hmm.
becomes less special. I was just wondering if you see that same transition happening soon, and how that may affect their ability to sort of have that type of impact.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. Um, really good question. So I mean, I think we're at least a few years off before that happens, a few. And our mission is to open up access to space for all of humanity. So yes, that would impact these people's ability. I mean, Would it? I don't know if it would actually, because we want to go to suborbit and then orbit and then the moon and beyond. So we want to send people further and further and further as the capabilities allow. So I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if it would. Um, and I think whether or not it does, having 20% of the world having had this experience and like fully experiencing our planet as a planet in the universe, like that will shift things. And that's perhaps more powerful than having a person come back down and share and say, hey, this is what I saw and this is what happened to me. Because now it's actually happening to people all around the world. So I don't really know if it would make it less impactful, and it doesn't really matter because giving more and more people access to the overview effect is exactly what our mission is. And it
Yeah.
starts via sharing it verbally and works into more and more and more and more people actually going there.
And do you get the feeling that like people um, in like the US might be less excited than say somebody in like Latin America or in Africa about the opportunity of traveling this space? Because I think there's a lot of like um, I don't know, it just feels like there's a lot of maybe entitlement and
Totally.
lots of so many opportunities that it's hard to get excited about any one of them.
Yeah.
Whereas, like in these other places, this would be a truly kind of unique experience.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that we have people, I mean, we get pushback from people all over the world, and we also have supporters from people all over the world. Like I said, we more than 100 countries and nations represented in our first round of applications. And I think that, yeah, the support can come from all over and pushback can also come from all over. And it's about continuing to do it. 'Cause knowing that like the support is the reason that we're doing it is more powerful than any pushback that we can get. And it doesn't matter where that pushback is coming from.
Um, I have trouble imagining people pushing back on this idea, so that's kind of news to me. What
Totally.
what what form does that take?
I think the most often thing that I hear, and honestly, it's happening less and less and less and less since I started. I started working in space like 5 years ago ish. So, um, the most common response that I get when I share what we're doing in Space for Humanity, the most common pushback I get, most commonly people are excited about it, but the most common pushback that I get is we've got enough problems on our own planet. Why would we leave this one? Why would we spend these resources to do that? And it's interesting because yeah, that's something that I talk about a lot is this people perceive this false dichotomy between space exploration and global challenges. Like it's like if we go to space, then suddenly it's like we're not addressing all these things that we're facing right now. And that's just not it. Like that's just not it. Like we go to space for the benefit of life on Earth. And we go to space so that we can more powerfully and effectively address the challenges that we're facing on Earth right now.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that pushback. My
Right.
original plan with this project was to interview people at Starbucks and on the streets and at the mall and stuff. And between like middle of December and the middle of March, I
Mhm.
interviewed people in Minneapolis and London and York and Edinburgh and streets of Houston and what have you. So I got to talk to kind of like non-space people, everyday people. I wanted to see what they thought,
Mhm.
and that opportunity cost is definitely something that comes up quite a bit. Um,
Totally.
and what I found to be really effective, or the approach that I've most enjoyed with that is to explore their issue of whatever it is, and kind of like Um, so how do you see that problem getting solved and addressed? And then, why can't we do that too? And how
Mhm.
is, yeah, I mean, because if you think about it, whenever we landed on the moon in 1969, there were half the number of brains on the
Mhm.
Earth, and they weren't connected like they are
Mhm.
now. And we didn't have like the internet where you could learn anything and connect with anybody.
Yeah.
And now we have twice the number of problem solvers, and we should be able to handle, like 10 times the number of problems effectively than we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, so what is your vision for what humanity looks like 500 years from now?
Whoa, that's a long time.
Yes, but it's basically the same amount of time as since Christopher Columbus made his voyage from Europe.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard to, it's really, it's a thoughtful number for sure. And the, thinking about how quickly how exponentially our advancements in technology have been going, I don't even know if we'll be in these meat suits anymore. You know, like in 500 years, I could imagine us being like, and this is yeah, I can imagine us being like light beams moving through the universe from planet to planet, and then like shifting into a different biological life form that adapts to its environment. So on like whatever planet it is, we just adapt there.
Um, what what makes you uh, what makes you think that hasn't already happened and we're not already those life forms?
Whoa. Okay. Huh. What makes me think that that hasn't already happened? I mean, it just would have had to happen as like cellular life, you know? Like that would have been what the light beam converted into, and then like it took millions and millions of years to evolve.
Well, I mean, the concept of a soul, our spirit, or what have you, is a pretty common thing. Maybe it's our psychological way of wanting to create permanence where there isn't any. On
Mm-hmm.
the other hand, then maybe at some level we become like a receiver for light beams from other places.
Mm. I love this. I'm a full supporter of this theory that we just came up with. But that probably exists already. But yeah, I love it, Nathan. I'm gonna think about this.
Yeah, I mean, we just don't know the nature of it. It's
Yeah.
kind of weird. Um, I so what do you know about the 1990s
What do you wanna yeah, what do you
in
wanna ask?
terms of computing and the internet?
Not
Like,
too much.
okay, so in 1990, um, not most people did not have computers, right? And the people that did and connected to each other actually dialed into bulletin board services, which were other people that had computers and hooked up to their telephone.
Mm-hmm.
And we all used landlines, so
Mm-hmm.
like nobody had cell phones. There were no pagers. I mean, there may have been, well, not really. Few people had pagers, no cell phones. And you could dial into this thing and you could leave messages for other people who could get them, but you had to hang up and they had to dial into it. You can upload and download programs and other stuff. But then, like in '94, Netscape was like the first web browser that was really popular. The company Netscape went public. Amazon got started. Um, like in 1990, nobody, like very few people knew what email was, and it wasn't like this global thing. And there was almost, I mean, I don't even think there were websites. But then by 2000, everybody was on the internet. Everybody had an email address. All major companies had like a web presence. You could buy books online. It was like the 1990s was like a major transformation in the way we communicated, computed,
Mm-hmm.
and what became normal. Like
Mm-hmm.
you would probably have an easier time in 1990 explaining to somebody why astronauts float than you
Mm-hmm.
would explaining to them what a website and email address were.
Mm.
Um, so that's kind of the difference there. And the reason I bring that up is because I feel like that based upon sort of the energy and all the investment and everything, that the
Mm-hmm.
2020s are going to be to space exploration what the 1990s were to internet and to computing. That
Absolutely.
in 2030, there are things that will be common that will be impossible to imagine now,
Mm-hmm.
that people who are born during this decade will never be able to imagine, just like you probably are still challenged to imagine what the 1990s were like from my
Totally.
description.
Yeah,
um
or like what it could possibly be like before that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you felt the same way, or do you think that maybe is overly optimistic?
Um, right. I mean, I could go both directions here, but I do think that it is an unprecedented time in human history. And I think that it is hard to imagine what is going to happen in the next 10 years. And yeah, and I think I'll be really interesting to see how this all unfolds, and fascinated to see what it'll be like as people do go to the moon and create settlements there, and our technology takes us further in further out into the solar system and beyond. I do think that it's an unprecedented time, and we are most definitely making history right now.
I mean, because for 420 bucks, I like paid to send this little micro SD card to like the surface of the moon next year,
Mhm.
right? Which
So
this
cool.
video is going on, and you'll be on the moon. uh
Yeah.
that's, even doing that was unimaginable, like uh a few years ago. And by 2030, this may seem like really goofy, like why would you do that? It's
Yeah.
like whenever you could send like an entire, I don't know, time capsule with
Mm-hmm.
real physical stuff in it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It's amazing and super, super exciting. Yeah.
Um, so when do you think you'll be able to go into space?
By 2030.
By
Yeah.
2030?
Mm-hmm. My ultimate life's dream is to throw a party on the moon.
And
So,
see, I want to retire there. So
okay, great.
yeah,
Great. So that
eh,
that could be part of the party. It could be like your retirement party.
yeah, awesome. Yeah, well, we'll have it at my dome.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah.
Um, let's see. So when did you find out that we're planning to send people to the moon in 2024?
When it first was announced, I found out.
Now,
Um, yeah.
most of the non-space people I've talked to don't know about it. In
Yeah.
fact, I've heard some reactions are like, we thought we shut everything down in 2011, with the retirement of the space shuttle.
Mm.
I've heard reactions like, why is NASA keeping it a secret? I've
Mm-hmm.
heard reactions like, oh, I thought that's where the astronauts went. So,
Mm. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, that just shows how important it is that we educate the public right now, and we keep sharing this and sharing what's possible and what's happening. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so what's the biggest challenge that you face at Space for Humanity in terms of actually getting people into space?
I would say probably waiting for the technology to be ready. Yeah, it's definitely, we've all been waiting since the early 2000s, and we're all still waiting, and we're excited about it. Yeah. And just to be responsible for the time, Nathan, I
Oh,
do have
sure.
a call coming up. Any final questions?
Um, okay, so imagine this: 100
Uh,
years from now, a high school girl is on the moon completing a project about what were people thinking before the new space age.
yeah.
And she is finds a set of videos to kind of, for the research for her paper.
Uh-huh.
And specifically, she finds this video. And
Hmm.
what would you want to tell her?
Mm. Wow. Oh my gosh, big question. Um, wow. Give me a second. What would I want to tell her? Hmm. I feel like I have more questions than anything to tell her. Yeah, I would just want to ask her things.
Okay, let's say she was able to get one answer to you. What would be the question you ask her?
Mm. What I would tell her and what I would ask her would be some of like similar. It would be like, what values have gotten us there? Like, what are now our values? Do we value money and power and all the things that seem to be running our society? Or do we value things like um, empathy and love and and life of all kinds? Like what is now our values? Yeah.
The values of the future.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful thought. And I really appreciate your time, Rachel. And thanks for supporting my project. I know you've sent a lot of people to I complete these
Totally.
interviews. I got so many more to do. So if you have more people, send them. Especially if you
Totally.
have non-space people. Anytime you get pushback, say,
Okay,
"Oh,
great.
I got the guy to talk to."
Can do. Can do. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nathan. I really appreciate it.
Sure thing. Well, best wishes, and you have a good day.
Awesome. Bye bye.
Bye bye.